the way that I was trained to play with kids did not work with my son at all. And I didn't even realize that. I sort of realized in the process of raising him, like, his play is very kind of solitary, and I want to be there with him while he's playing it.
Play isn't just something kids do for fun. It's how they explore, connect, and make sense of the world. But how exactly does play build emotional resilience? And how can we better understand the messages kids are sending through their play, especially when they can't quite find the words? Today we're talking with Georgie Wisen-Vincent, a renowned play therapist and co-author of The Way of Play, about the neuroscience of play, how it supports neurodivergent kids, and how adults, whether in therapy, the classroom, or at home, can use play to foster stronger, safer relationships. That's straight ahead on episode 280. I'm Emily Kircher-Morris, and this is the Neurodiversity Podcast.
What is neurodiversity?
You see the world differently.
Autism spectrum.
Gifted.
Complexities that are inherently inside.
ADHD.
Dysgraphia.
Tourette's.
All brains are different.
You are exactly what this world needs.
This is the
Neurodiversity
Podcast.
I was well into adulthood, after finishing my master's in gifted ed, actually, before I ever heard the term twice exceptional, which is kind of funny because I was that kid. Neurodivergent, definitely ADHD, and definitely misunderstood. When I started working in education and then eventually mental health, I realized just how many kids were falling through the cracks the same way I did. Not because people didn't care, but because they didn't have the right language or tools. That's part of why we created Neurodiversity University, to close that gap. We've got practical courses for educators and therapists on topics like understanding dyslexia, supporting twice exceptional learners, and neurodiversity-affirming therapy. You can use them for your own self-study, or if you're looking for some amazing PD to offer the teachers in your district, we have various options that are sure to fit your school and staff. If you want to find out all about the courses we have available, head on over to neurodiversity.university or click the link in the show notes. Okay, Georgie is here with me in a minute.
on a recent episode of the Neurodiversity Podcast.
You know, the historical approach, particularly with neurodivergence, has been the overarching goal is how do we make you stop being neurodivergent? How do we make you, you know, it's a meaningless term, but how do we make you act normal? How do we make you stop inconveniencing the people around you instead of how can we support you? What are your goals and values? And understanding that internal experience of living as a neurodivergent person in a world that's not designed for your brain. So there's been a lot more vocalization from neurodivergent communities of why would you do this work without centering the people that you're supposedly here to help, basically.
That's episode 251, Moving from Traditional to Neurodiversity Affirming Therapy. Find it wherever you get your podcasts.
Today, I'm excited to talk with Georgie Wisen-Vincent. Georgie is a nationally recognized expert in play therapy and the co-author of The Way of Play alongside Dr. Tina Payne-Bryson. She's the founder and director of the Play Strong Institute, where she focuses on how play therapy supports healthy neurodevelopment in kids. Georgie also works directly with children, teens, and families at the Center for Connection in Southern California. In addition to her clinical work, she teaches graduate courses at Santa Clara University and actively researches the fascinating intersections of childhood play, attachment science, and mental health. Georgie, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Emily. It's a real honor to be here.
When a lot of people think about playing, they immediately imagine very young children, but play can actually offer really powerful emotional support for older kids, teens, all ages, really, as they face life's ups and downs. Talk a little bit about how play supports emotional resilience and what that might look like throughout those different age groups.
Yeah, I mean, one of the big reasons that Tina and I got together and wanted to create sort of an easy to follow manual on play for parents, teachers, really anybody that works with or cares for children from the ages around birth to 12 years old, but even beyond that into adolescence. And we as adults should keep playing throughout our lifespan. Like, it's not something that we should ever stop doing, is because a lot of people find play this very mysterious concoction. And we find that most adults believe that play caps out when kids graduate from preschool, which is very troubling considering how important it is for kids' mental health, for their emotional wellness, for their sense of self, for their learning. You know, we know that kids who are offered enough body breaks at school, we talk about this in the early pages of the book, when kids get enough time for movement and sensory balance throughout the school day, we know that they're more focused, engaged learners who come back from recess feeling reinvigorated to get back into their math and language arts. Like, it is really vital on so many levels, not only to broaden kids' emotional ability, if we're thinking about like being responsive to all of the challenges that are coming kids' way on a daily basis, but also creating more of a cognitive vibrance, like I'm an excited learner and I'm engaged in my world and I want to, expand myself academically or personally in lots of different ways. It can also be preventative. When kids are bound to encounter challenges, adversity in the future, it sets them up for a pattern of resilient responding, a pattern of, I'm a great problem solver. You give me a bunch of blocks, like I'm thinking about Alison Gopnik's research in her lab, where she's looked at how quickly 5-year-olds solve problems compared to the rest of us. And you give me a stack of blocks and I'm going to try 1,000 different ways to stack these blocks to get the top one to light up pink, way before the adults have come up with the first couple of solutions. 4 and 5-year-olds have already tried, a bunch, a myriad different ways to solve this problem. So I think what we wrote in the book is to emphasize play's importance and also to expand on the preventative or curative aspects of play for our kids too.
Mm-hmm. When we define play, there's some aspect of experimentation that goes along with it. What other qualities really make play play?
I think we had all of our kids in mind when we wrote the book. When I trained as a play therapist about 20 years ago, actually in England, we were really operating off of a lot of the old models of development. And I don't want to call them old as if they don't matter anymore. They very much matter. And I think they give us some kind of framework for understanding around the phases that we tend to see certain abilities expanding across childhood. But what I didn't know at the time was that we have very much started to think about kids in terms of their individual differences. Mm-hmm. And so we had kids with individual differences in mind as we were writing this book, really thinking about expanding our notion of what play is. Play could be anything that, is sort of a self-driven. We really thought about free play when we were writing The Way of Play. So coming from a space of what lights up your child in a self-driven way, rather than thinking of play as only constructing with blocks or only dressing up in a ballerina costume and pretending to be a dancer. Thinking about play as developing from the early days of just, sensory motor, trying things out in the sandbox, and making messes, all the way to, the highest levels of pretend play or sociodramatic play, where you think about kids, pretending to cook something in the kitchen and they're taking on the role of the chef, and deciding they're going to make sushi for all their friends. Or putting on a show in the living room and assigning roles to each member of the family or something like that. Really kind of thinking about play much more creatively. And when I think about the neurodivergent kids, I have one myself, my 11-year-old, and how much I learned about play raising him. Play could look very individualized, like this is what I want to do and this is my own interest that I want to dive deep into, or play could be highly social, or it could be observing play. Like some kids I know, they want to go to the playground and they just want to see what other kids are up to, and they want to sit and kind of do their own play-by-play of what other people are doing. And for them, that's play. So we're really expanding the notion of what play is and almost like redefining it for our kids who, wouldn't necessarily fit those traditional molds of developmental models, but we need to break out of that mold anyway.
Mm-hmm. Play has been described as the language of children, and I love that concept. Mm-hmm. As adults, we might find it really tricky to interpret what exactly kids are communicating through their play. Can you give us just a few little insights or guidance on how we can learn to listen better to that communication, and what kinds of messages or feelings might come through those types of interactions?
Yeah, I love the strategies that we've laid down in the book. I want parents who are picking it up, or teachers who may want to apply some of the concepts in their classrooms. I want everybody to know that no matter who you are, you're picking up this book and we're giving you some ideas of things to use with your kid, but it should very much be personalized to what they're interested in, what they're into. So when I'm sitting down with my kid, I'm setting aside this time to be intentional for just a few minutes at a time. We're not promoting the idea that play needs to take hours and hours of time, or that you have to have all the latest, toys that come out on the market right before the holidays or something to make play exciting and useful for your family. But kids are really making the most of the time when they have somebody tuning into them, somebody who isn't just saying, go off and play by yourself, although kids should have more time for independent play. They should have more time for engaging in play with their peers and their siblings, or even in their neighborhoods, or more time at school during the typical school day to play. But what we're really saying is that when an adult can tune into a child's play, that they really get to tap into a kid's world and to see what's going on inside their mind in a different way. So I really just wanted to touch really quickly on one of the strategies in the book that is the first one, a place that we like to start with parents and anybody who's, wanting to dig into play a little bit more with their kids. It's called Think Out Loud. And so when you see something that your kid is playing, let's say they pick up some magnetiles and they're starting to build something and you don't quite know what it is yet, but you're starting to pay attention in this different way, that kids can actually communicate a lot about how their brains are developing, how their minds are making sense of things, and their very unique way of approaching what could be, something that's easy for them or something that might be a little bit more challenging, like a skill that they might be building. So I'm thinking about my kid the other day building with magnetiles, putting something together. And if I just kind of try and name what I think he might be doing, then he feels like, oh my gosh, you can almost read my mind. Like this is something that connects us, that I could create something and that you almost can read what I'm thinking about. And that actually builds a whole plethora of skills that we didn't even know were all that important until we looked into the research on reflective functioning for parents or other grownups that are with kids. This idea that when we reflect with our kids, they learn to reflect too. And so kids can start to know what's going on in their own minds just by doing this simple step of playing with them and almost like naming what you see them doing without over-assuming. So some kids really hate that. I'm thinking about my neurodivergent kid. If you start to label too much what he's doing, like it looks like you're building a skyscraper, he'll tell you off right away. Kids are very much the directors of their play. And some kids I know can be extremely picky about what we say or the ways that we join in their play. Some kids feel like you should stay out completely. And other kids really want us to be sort of in it all the time. And so the way that we join and the way that we can think out loud with our kids really can help them communicate a lot about who they are, can also help them learn to communicate what they're reflecting on. And that can pay out dividends later on when they're having an emotional moment. They're going through something that's really, really hard. And they learn, oh, it's not just when we play. If you're attuned to me, then I can turn to you in these moments. And just like the way that we chat to each other about what I'm playing, I could also let you know in this much more difficult or emotional moment, I can think out loud about what I'm feeling at the same time. Mm-hmm. And so just taking the first strategy in the book and kind of practicing that as you play with your kid. It's something you're practicing. They don't have to practice playing because they already know what they're doing. And they're often teaching us, like, that's not the way you cackle like a wicked witch, you know? So it's really cool that our kids can share what's going on inside their mind with us and learn to get even better at doing that with us just by practicing in their play when the stakes are lower. Then when the stakes are higher, when they're having a stressful moment, they're more likely to turn to us and feel like they can trust us with that stuff. So that's one big way that play can help kids learn to communicate, and that we can tap into that communication, whether they're playing or whether, it's just when we're parenting.
Yeah. In addition to showing them that you're listening, even when they're not speaking, we're also kind of modeling some metacognition for them, like teaching them how to think about what it is that they're doing by kind of providing some of that language for them in that process. And like you said, when you start talking about the self-regulation, there is a component of that really does require us to be able to reflect on what's happening internally and express that. So it kind of is just this stair step towards, or a scaffold towards those next steps.
Yes, absolutely. There was a child I once played with where they were trying to build a tent out of these play silks. So they're like gossamer, a little breeze blows by or somebody walks by it. And if they don't have it clipped tight enough between two chairs, it could like blow away. And this is, in the context of a play therapy session, but you don't have to be a play therapist to make use of what's in the way of play. That's why we wrote it. So anybody, can come along and utilize some of the same ideas around how to help kids build in more emotion regulation. When they're not even thinking about it, they're usually relaxed when they play. They're usually having a great time. They're having a ball. So it's the ideal situation to try and widen their green zone or their window of tolerance to try more, but be able to handle emotions that might normally be really difficult for them to hold themselves together in these moments. So a kid just building a play fort or a tent with these play silks can be an opportunity to not only tune into them, but to see them balancing sometimes on a very wobbly thread of, can I handle how I'm feeling about getting this fort set up exactly the way I want it? Or am I going to topple over into some frustration here? And so, in fact, these play silks kept coming loose. And so we have a kid who is a very sweet child and now struggling between, am I going to be able to keep clipping these things up? Or how am I going to move, from chair to chair? And do I want the adult's help or do I not want my adult's help to keep this thing up? Because my goal is hanging in the balance. If I don't get this thing up, then I won't be able to put the baby dolls under there and set up the whole stage and the setup for the next part of the play, which could have been, we didn't even know what that was going to be yet. So think about everything that a child has to do to tether their emotion regulation skills to their executive functioning skills, which is this new wave in the mental health field. Like, we're talking so much more about how important executive function is and how it relies on, can I keep a hold on my emotions? So those two things often go hand in hand. So I can't emphasize enough that there's something very purposeful in why children play for so much of childhood. It sets us up for opportunities to sort of mirror their emotions and also build in opportunities, or those opportunities are already built in and waiting for us to notice with them, oh, this is really frustrating, and you're still trying. I noticed, so, part of a strategy in the way of play is called scaffold and stretch, where you're really there to be your child's assistant, but you're also noticing with them what parts of this is hard. And you're there to scaffold the support that they need, but you want to not help too much that you let them stretch some of these abilities. Some of them might be emotion regulation and executive function working together to build this darn, silk fort that they're trying to put together. So really joining with them without taking over and telling them how to do it, but giving them just little hints or clues. Like, I noticed when you clipped one side of the tent up, it pulled the chair. The chair started tipping a little bit. And I wonder what we could do about that, right? Instead of diving in and kind of rescuing or hanging back so much that they're going to tip the scales into frustration and then we've lost the moment, right? So really helping hold them in that space where they get to work on their regulation ability, like to the max. And hopefully they're still enjoying it enough by the end that it's still motivating. It's keeping that dopamine and other happy hormones flowing. So it feels like they're laying down a memory around, I can do hard things with the help of my person, my caregiver. They're not going to let me struggle too much, but they're going to let me struggle enough that I can build in some of this regulation that I need. Wouldn't it be great if they could thank us for doing that? Like, play is such a thankless thing that parents do so much of the time. They're like, oh, don't make me get on the floor and crash two cars together. This is the most boring thing in the world. I don't know if you've heard that too. Or
It's okay the first 1,000 times, but then
why does it have to be so repetitive? And the truth is, when we start to look at it through the lens of the way of play, a lot of parents have told Tina and I, like, I'm just seeing new things that I never saw before, that these things that I used to feel were boring and repetitive that my kids are doing, I can actually see the skills coming out of it. And I feel really well poised to help scaffold those skills with my kids. So isn't that a cool gift to be able to give back to your child? Because they're going to play for a while in childhood.
You've mentioned a couple of times applying some of this and thinking about how neurodivergent kids kind of fit into this whole conversation. Because I think there often are these assumptions about the right way that kids should play, or the way that kids who are part of the neuronormative population, how they play. And so therefore, we should get them to play in this particular way. But really, neurodivergent kids just engage in that play differently because they have different needs and interests completely. Can you talk about adapting some of those approaches to meet neurodivergent kids where they are?
Yeah, I have to start answering this question with a personal story because 10 years ago when I had my child, I assumed that because I had already trained as a play therapist, that as soon as my toddler started, building train sets and putting railroad tracks down in the living room, that I was going to be the perfect play parent. And what ended up happening was the way that I was trained to play with kids did not work with my son at all. And I didn't even realize that. I sort of realized in the process of raising him, like, his play is very kind of solitary, and I want to be there with him while he's playing it. But it was almost as if he didn't need me at all. And he also needed, he needed support around speech and things like that. That was a decision that my husband and I consciously made to do some early intervention. But the process of realizing the player that he was made me reflect on the assumptions that I had about how kids are supposed to play. And it didn't make me question whether there was something wrong with my kid. It made me go, I need to learn other ways of understanding him. And I want him, whatever we decide to do with intervention, like, the most important thing to me is that he knows that I'm here for him and that we're able to form a relationship out of the way that he prefers to play and where his brain wants to go with this. And so it kind of created a revolution in the way that I thought about the importance of play to child development and the developmental uniqueness of every child, And it changed who I was as a therapist as well. And so I don't think that I could have written this book about the neurotypical play of a child. I just don't believe that anymore. But I also find myself still stumbling using some of these developmental models in the way that I was trained, where I still have to keep reminding myself, like, we can't expect play to look, like this, that, or the other. And that kids are developing in play and their other skills on their own timeline. And it's really important to celebrate and honor the way that kids play as a way toward relationship with them and relationship with each other and their peers and how they're, forming social connections and all of these things. So I don't know if I'm getting to your full question there, Emily, but I just want to say it's quite a personal issue for me. And I still find myself reflecting a lot on, I don't want to reinforce neuronormative norms on kids. I really want them to feel like this is, if this way of playing makes me feel good and comfortable and it's a part of who I am and it reflects my deep interest, then I just want to learn how to join them. It's really about changing myself to meet them where they are at any given moment. So I hope that comes close, but it's still an evolution for me personally. I'm still always learning.
Same. When you are very much in this world, you just revert back sometimes to the way that you've done things before or the way that you did things when you were growing up. And so it does take that intentionality that I really appreciate. That's what I hear you saying. It's like we have to just step back for a moment and think about what it takes to meet those kids where they are in order to have that relationship and that communication that comes out of the play in a way that's authentic and meaningful for them.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think you can say it better than that. I do want to say that when my kid was also little, that's around the time that I met Tina for the first time. And I think that her work writing books like The Whole Brain Child and No Drama Discipline with Dan Siegel was sort of a guiding light in helping me understand that no two brains are alike, that, she inspired me a lot. And when I came on board to work with her at her practice, the Center for Connection, it skyrocketed a lot of the now understanding that I have around helping children to, discover who they are, to be able to help adults enter into your child's world. Because my son was not, he wasn't looking to show me things. He wasn't referencing me in his play. And I could have gone away feeling like there was something deeply wrong with that. Or I could look at it as, this is a creative opportunity for me to find ways to make this meaningful for him. Like, how can I make this meaningful for him in his development? And so Tina was pivotal around that, as well as Mona Delahook. I love Mona's work, and I actually was privileged enough to get to meet with her, and she met with me and my kid. And she just gave me so much, I don't know, inspiration. Her love of children is so evident that it was infectious. And it really, in a very dark time when I didn't know what the future was going to hold from, it's really scary for parents finding out new information about their child's development. I think she gave me just this breath of hope, and she showed me what our relationship could look like. And I was like, yes, that's where I want to go. That's what I want to focus on here. Yeah. So I have to thank both of them. Not only I got to write the book with Tina, but I have to really acknowledge Mona and thank her for that too.
Yeah, Mona's wonderful. We love her. Here's a question, a little bit off the topic that we were just talking about. And it's a broad question, so take it wherever you want to go with it. But
okay.
In the educational setting, there's this constant pulling back on that unstructured time, recess and downtime, in the effort to increase opportunities for curricular learning or to close the achievement gap. And then there's this other component that I feel like takes away from playtime for kids, which is just the constant use of screens, both at home and at school. Is there value to screens? Are there things that can be valuable as far as play goes there? And then also, are you seeing any shifts in the schooling that are compensating for this reduction in that unstructured time that are hopeful, or is there something that is just a big shift that needs to happen there?
Yeah, I think, based on my own experience of trying to find a version of balance between schooling and the emphasis on academics, which is pushing down younger and younger now. I think that, from what I've seen in the last several years, with the introduction of tabletop learning and eyes on me focus is, pushing younger and younger, that something that we're noticing is that there are wider developmental gaps as kids are getting into the older elementary. And we're even seeing that now that they're, entering middle school, and they're going to need to be, they're going to be asked to be solving more difficult problems or coming up with their own thesis statements and essay writing and things like that. And the creativity that could have been emphasized when they were younger is now being replaced with a specific academic agenda. And so that doesn't always show up right away, but we're now starting to see the effects of that as kids are getting into the later elementary years and middle and high school. So that's one element where it's troubling that kids are not being offered more play-based learning in those early years, that's starting to be scaled back and even disappear in some educational settings. The thing about screen time is that I know some kids who are wildly imaginative when they're in a screen-based environment, and they can build and discover and grow and connect with other people in ways that it's very difficult. Let's say you have a child that has trouble with finer gross motor skills and planning, and so it'd be very difficult for them to create an imaginative world in a physical space, but they can do that when they're in sort of a block building game or something like that. Or they are having sort of a virtual play date with 3 other kids, and the problem solving that's happening. Even most recently, when, close to where our offices are in Southern California, the wildfires swept extremely close to our offices, and we've lost huge swaths of neighborhoods around our location. And we're now offering more therapy for families who have experienced these losses. And in the days following the California wildfires, we saw kids and heard reports of kids who were jumping on games together because they were sort of like they'd lost their house or they couldn't go to school for, weeks. And they're hopping on games with their friends, and they're playing about building houses in Minecraft that are fireproof, and they have water moats around them and stuff that would prevent the fires from getting in. And so they were healing what they were afraid of. They were playing about their fears about the fires, and they were able to find, like, this is what we could do about it. And they can enact that in the space of a game, even like a screen-based game. So I'm like, shoot, I don't want to lose all of the things that are positive about screen-based games, but I worry about kids not receiving the benefits of play if they're engaging on screens in ways that wouldn't carry the same kind of benefits. And in some cases, it can be really overstimulating, and it can cause family battles and all the rest of it. So I think it's like, how do we balance this? I think it's really about finding balance and keeping in mind that kids need much more real world play than they're currently getting. I think that that's sort of the bottom line. They need much more of it. I can't tell you exactly how much all kids need because I've moved away from saying every kid is exactly the same. But generally speaking, they need much more real world play than they're currently getting.
Yeah. Georgie, I'm really so happy we had a chance to have this conversation. Before we wrap up, I'd love to ask you one last question. If there's someone listening right now who's looking for just one simple but impactful place to start, something they could try today to really build those stronger connections and support the children in their lives through play, what would you suggest to them? What would be the starting place?
I think you've got to ask yourself, would it be better for me to think about an amount of time? Can I dedicate, am I the type of person that likes to set a timer, and I'll do 10 minutes of letting, my kid or my kids decide what is it that we want to do with this time, engaging in just real world imaginative play, following your kids' interests, getting them into free play, especially with the summer coming up. What better time to sort of set a little bit of a goal or a timer or something, and to see how long can I comfortably be with my kids and think about, like, how can I just mirror them in their play? Like, what is it that makes them light up? What emotions am I seeing coming up in this play? And if my kid is just wanting to, I don't know, have a pillow fight or something, and that's what they want to do with that 10 minutes, then how can I really, like, the second strategy in the book is called, mirroring your child or making yourself a mirror. Like, if my child is making a face like, I'm going to get you, is there some way that I can mirror that back to them and know that that's creating a chain reaction, a ripple effect for my kid that actually the research shows can make them more attuned to other people, more empathic to other people. It lights up the brain in such a way that we're now both really vibing with each other. And that, studies have even shown that kids are even more cooperative after they've received this kind of mirroring and empathy from a parent or somebody else important in their lives in the grown-up world. Do I just want to set a timer for 10 minutes? Or is there something that I really enjoy? This is the second option. Is there something that I really enjoy that would mean that if I was doing this with my kid, if they were open to it, if we both want to, whip up pancakes and look at it as play, because anything really can be play if you're both really enjoying the heck out of it and you want to spend this time together, can I approach it with that same playful mindset? You can just make pancakes with your kid and you can get through the task-oriented nature of it. Or you can really, decide to embody the characters, like we're being chefs right now, and who's the head chef and who's the sous chef, and what kind of pancakes are these going to be? Do we want to throw in a weird ingredient that we've never tried before, and things like that? Whoops, I spilled some on the floor. Oh my gosh, let's be flexible and see like how we're going to clean this up. Maybe we'll use the actual mop. We'll mop it all up. The idea isn't to make more work for parents, more cleanup, more hassle around, how long is this going to take and how quickly can I get this all cleaned up afterward? But what we're really doing is creating new memories with our kids. We're laying down the groundwork for them maybe one day to be with their kids in the same way. So when you think about it, you're creating a generation of playful, open, flexible, emotionally resilient people. And I can't think of a better way to spend 10 minutes or 30 minutes or, maybe an afternoon with my child doing something that is going to become sort of a lasting, lifelong memory that may even follow them into the next generation.
Georgie Wisen-Vincent, author of The Way of Play. Thanks so much for your time today.
Thank you, Emily. It's been really fun.
One of the things I really appreciate about this conversation with Georgie was how clearly she emphasized that there's no one right way to play. That might sound simple, but it's a pretty powerful reminder, especially for those of us supporting neurodivergent kids. Because the truth is, we've all been conditioned to look for certain kinds of play. Pretend play with dolls or action figures, building something imaginative with blocks or Legos. But what if a kid prefers to line things up, or repeat the same scene over and over, or talk through a story using facts and stats instead of characters and voices? That's still play. That's still communication. What Georgie reminds us is that play is a language, and every child has their own dialect. And just like with spoken language, it's our job as the adults to learn how to listen. not force them to translate for us. So when we expand our ideas of what play should look like, we also expand our ability to connect, to build safety, to co-regulate, and to understand kids on their own terms. That is what neurodiversity affirming support really looks like. I'm Emily Kircher-Morris. I'll see you next time on the Neurodiversity Podcast.
Today and not tomorrow, there's no time to borrow. Today, well, something's gotta give. Today is a good day to live.
Thanks again to Georgie Wisen-Vincent. I have to say, this whole episode made me want to go out and buy a Rubik's Cube and a ViewMaster and some Lincoln Logs. I guess I can expense those, right? Anyway, if you need more information about Georgie's work, you'll find links in the show notes. Also, check our website for summertime swag. It's at neurodiversitypodcast.com. Our host is Emily Kircher-Morris. Corey Orrick is our office manager and production assistant. I'm the executive producer, Dave Morris. For all of us, thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Today and not tomorrow, there's no time to borrow. Today, well, something's gotta give. Today is a good day to live.
This is a service of the Neurodiversity Alliance,